Hello. Hey. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonny Tiernan. I'm editor of the Berliner magazine. We all know who Frank is now. Hi. I'll do a quick introduction for Balbina in case you don't know who she is already. Yeah, she is a singer, songwriter, and a composer, originally from Warsaw, but a Berliner since the age of 3, so I think we can classify you as a Berliner at this point. She's been described by Rolling Stone as the greatest discovery in German pop in a long time. You've released 4 albums. Your first was in 2011, and your most recent was in 2020, and 2 EPs. But you're also a founding member and creative director of the Academy for Popular Music and POLYTON. Am I saying POLYTON correctly? Cool. Which is a musician-led network that aims to provide more visibility and support for musicians outside of the conventional structures of the music industry. But cooler than that is in 2024, Tagesspiegel named Balbina as one of the 100 most important creative figures in Berlin. So cool. Thank you for joining us, and thanks, Frank. Also, how good were Die Anstalt?
Yeah.
Hey, give it up for Die Anstalt, It feels a little bit like, when the headliner gets blown away by the support band. That's the feeling I have right now. But it's still a tough act to follow.
It kind of reminds me when I went and saw David Bowie play and 9 Inch Nails opened for him. Think of that for a second, right? It was a time frame they were working together. 9 Inch Nails came out, ended like the sound that they just did, and then David David and Trent basically sang together on the songs they knew. And then he broke into what he does, and people left. Because the energy level was so intense, and it was at like an arena out in New Jersey. It was like crazy. So that's who we are tonight. So your expectations, go low, go really low. Okay. Everyone lean back, and now we'll start. Okay.
But you have just said that we're David Bowie in this situation, which you've just said that we're David Bowie in this situation.
We are David Bowie in this scenario.
And that's kind of okay, right?
Here we
I'm
go.
happy being David Bowie. So tonight we're going to be talking about the intersection of music and photography, looking at how and why these two art forms are so intricately intertwined and how the relationship between them has evolved over time, and then we'll talk about the impact of the digital era and what's happened there. So I'd like to start talking with you, Frank.
You can talk to me, go ahead, yes.
When did music and photography first intersect for you?
I was in art school, and I loved music, and I ended up sitting next to, in school, there was a woman named Jody Peckman. She was a photographer also, and she quit school and got a job at Rolling Stone and became a associate photo editor. And I was trying to shoot different things. My style seemed to fit right, and she would hire me to do quarter-page pictures for the magazine. And I kind of understood why I needed to do that, because I was able to constantly change, I didn't have to take the same picture over and over again. I could constantly do different images and try different things. So it allowed me to kind of grow as a photographer. So.
And what about before that, did you have any inspirations of music and photography? I mean, like me, whenever I was a kid, I was really music obsessed, so I would cut photographs out of magazines and put them up on the wall.
Yeah.
Did you have any of those kinds of associations?
No, I didn't. I blindly walked in it with great ignorance and just did what I wanted to do and didn't know the rules, and just kind of, in the early days when I started out, we would be sent without stylist to hair and makeup or whatever. I remember going to San Francisco to shoot Lars from Metallica at his house, and I was with one assistant. We knocked on his front door, and he was like, oh, hi, Frank. And I walked in, and we spent an hour taking pictures. Nowadays, it's like, there's a whole gauntlet of people to get through before you actually take the picture. So there was a great feeling back then that you didn't have this whole kind of piles of people around you to take the picture. Yeah. So, yeah. And so you could try different things, and no one was looking at the Polaroid going, no, I don't want you to photograph that. No, I don't want you to do that. You just did what you wanted to, so.
Yeah. Did it make it easier to find a connection with the person that you were photographing?
Yeah, well, there was less people around to kind of, you could sit at their kitchen table and discuss what you were about to do sometimes, yeah.
Cool. And just Balbina, same question for you. What was your first experience of the intersection of music and photography?
I think my first vivid memory of having the fusion of music and photography was Michael Jackson, actually. It was a picture of him in the Thriller era, where he had this red jacket, and it kind of I don't know why, but this image moved me in a way because I knew the music already. I was very young. We've just made it to Berlin because we're actually from Poland, and we wanted to make it to the West back in the days. And I remember that I couldn't really feel what kind of person that was, but this picture really made an impact on me and how I feel about pop music. That pop music isn't only about music, but it's a fusion of the picture, of the imagery, and of the music. And since then, I was like, pop music cannot be without pictures. And then afterwards, of course, without moving pictures, like with the videos and everything. So pop music and imagery is for me like one thing. It's like connected.
Yeah. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that in your own career as well, because German Vogue, they compared you to Lady Gaga and Kate Bush for the way in which you bring together sound and image in a unique and exciting way. I thought that was really cool of German Vogue to say that.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't really think so, that I do, because I think often in Germany, when somebody does something weird, they say you're like this or like that, but I just think maybe what they're trying to say is that I try to find a special visual, perspective on my music, and therefore I wouldn't compare myself to these amazing artists, but thank you.
But image is incredibly important to you. I mean, the photographs I've seen that I've taken of you, they're very striking, sharp. You have a really strong identity and image. Yeah. Has that been important to you from the start?
Yeah, from the start. I don't think that my music is valid if I don't do pictures, at the same time. When I write a song, write it with pictures, and then afterwards I want to take these pictures. So if I write a song, like for instance the last song I released, I knew I had to have a big white dress in the woods, and then I had to realize it for my music video. So I need to do that then afterwards, immediately, because then it's not finished. Because times are changed, you have streaming services, everything, and everyone tells you, no, you have to do songs and songs and songs and all. And the video is not important, do it on TikTok, do something authentic. And no, I cannot do authentic stuff, I need to build a picture. So it's the times are tough, but I'm trying to, find myself into this authentic picture world.
Before I segue back to Frank, are there particular photographers that you work with or videographers regularly that you build a relationship with?
Not always, sometimes. I have relationships with photographers, but I also like to be with someone who I don't know and where I don't know what's coming out of it. And what I really find very interesting in the last 2 years, working with photographers who don't know me and do analog photography, so I don't have a really choice of the pictures, because then you start to be and it's more about capturing the moment. And I kind of right now I'm in the let's find a photographer I don't know and to see what he sees.
Frank.
I don't work with photographers. No.
But for you, building up a relationship with an artist over time, is that something you'd like to do? Is that something that helps the photography become better or more authentic, or does it have an influence?
Sometimes. I mean, I have a couple people that I've worked with, over an arc. I mean, I think I did one of the first photo shoots with Garbage for Rolling Stone, and then over the years I've come back across them a couple times. David is the biggest. Each time I really didn't think I had anything else to say. I mean, but each situation was different, and he allowed me to kind of figure it out. Then you hit other artists who basically, the expectations, you do a great shoot up front in the very first one because it's all innocent and everyone's running around taking pictures. And then you do a second shoot and they're like, well, it didn't feel like the first one. Well, because there was an ignorance and an innocence to all that stuff. So it's kind of it's nicer to kind of keep meeting new people and trying new things. And it's interesting you were saying about like the presentation and how that is. I mean, photography is a huge visuals. Just say visuals. It's like, I mean, I hate to say it, the word I hate. Everything is content now. It's like, there's no more like doing art. It's like, we need content for the album. We need content for a movie. It does sound like it waters it down, but it allows a broader sense like between going online or basically doing, if you do an album cover and they only use the one picture for the album cover, you know that online they might use other stuff and it might pop up. So that's kind of the better part of that kind of conversation. But when I started out, it was like, you couldn't get bands to, like lead singers didn't want to be up front. They wanted to be buried. They didn't want to line up. They didn't want to do anything. It was like, and you were shooting bands that they barely showered. I mean, it was during the grunge era. And when you shot like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and all those bands, and I did music videos for Alice in Chains, I mean, they just would show up and it would just, you knew that they just basically got out of bed and what they were sleeping sometimes in some of the grunge bands. And they just look at you and there was like, let's get this over with, And and then rap kind of had a whole different era because there was a visual to that, but that was a kind of a thing, and then you hit but I was lucky. I worked in classical to jazz to the jazz musicians were the funniest because they didn't understand why I wanted to take their picture. Like we're going to spend all day doing this, and it's like, yeah, we're going to go over here and we're going to try this, and they look at the pictures like, oh yeah, that's cool, okay, I mean, like something like this with Phoebe Bridgers was something that I activated because I heard her first. I heard her on the radio, and then I called up her management and just said I wanted to photograph her. And they said, okay, go meet her. And I went down and met her with her mom. And she was opening up for, I forgot who she opened up for. But and then she came over to my house and we were wandering around. There'd been a fire nearby. And we spent a day just wandering around taking pictures, which was like something I hadn't done in years. And there was no money. We just did it. Because that's the fun of taking pictures, to be able to do that in the music industry. When you show up and there's like stylists and you're waiting. I mean, I also directed music videos for years, and other directors at the label, at the company I was with, would shoot rap bands, and 12 hours would go by and nothing happened, and they wouldn't come out of their trailers, and then all of a sudden they'd start working, and it just I kind of loved the point where there wasn't all this kind of insanity in the early days. You'd just show up and you'd take some pictures and wander around with a bag of cameras, Sometimes when even David approached that. Like, David would show up with a guitar case and a suitcase by himself and go like, let's take pictures. It's like, that was kind of great, when there's like hair and makeup and styling. And I mean, sometimes that works, but then otherwise you'll sit there for 3 hours waiting for them to come out of the hair and makeup. And the light might leave that you liked, or you might be waiting too long and it's just the energy of the room leaves. There's something about with music, to me, is a rhythm to it to take pictures, so.
And why do you think that there was this shift from the easier access to building up entourages?
I could say ego, but I don't think it's ego. It's a perception. I mean, people hired people to be publicists, and people hired people to be managers, and suddenly everyone seemed to need to have a job to kind of control the factor. And it's like saying to someone like, don't ask him to put a hat on. And so, you're sitting there and then he comes in wearing a hat, and you're like, well, the management doesn't want to wear a hat, so it's kind of like, that's why. So it's kind of like that kind of stuff. I did quite a few years. I worked with a guy named Keb Mo, and if you know Keb, he's like an amazing blues guitarist. And the very first time I photographed him, he's like 6'4", skinny. He dressed just like an old blues player, and so that's how I shot him. And then I did another album cover, and we did the same kind of thing. And they were like, well, he looks a lot like an old blues artist. And I'm like, well, that's who he is. And And then the third time, they basically said, "Do not shoot him," like that, you know. And I ended up doing a picture that was very much, I don't know if it'll pop up, but it's like him in the middle of a field out in Thousand Oaks with the sun behind him, and it's just his beautiful shape in the middle of this field, you know. And they just shook their heads at me when I shot it. And Kev was like, "This is great. This is exactly." So there's that factor of people thinking they know more than the artist sometimes, and then you have to kind of like move yourself around it. So, you know.
You're talking a lot about shooting album covers as well.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering is, for modern artists today, I know that you work with a lot of modern artists and have contact with them. Is the album cover and album art still as important today as it was? I mean, I'm sure there are people here who still listen to albums. But there was a time whenever it was such a big selling point to have a good album cover. Is it as important today for musicians?
I think it's even more important, but in a different way, because people are consuming the streaming services and social media in a very fast way. That means that the attention has to be brought to the consumer immediately, and it works more on impulse and on triggering a certain emotion. And I think it's very different from when I grew up and went to record stores and, looked at the shelves and looked at the records, and then you looked at the cover and you took it into your hands and you were thinking about how it moves you, or you were walking into the room and from here to there and you watched it all and you'd be like, oh, that's interesting, and that's interesting on a second glance. And I think it's, in these times, it's even more important, but on a hyper capitalistic, fast way. So it has to move immediately. And I think, of course, pop culture was always about, moving masses and being like very fast and having these emotions pop like immediately. But right now, it's like really extreme, I think, and there is no space for having a certain feeling for a certain picture, and that's what I like. What I fear the most is like the time that people have to get the impact of something and to get the impact of pictures, because even on Instagram we were consuming the pictures like, blah blah blah, like, they're coming in, and it's like too fast for my mind to realize what's going on there. And I think, like, when I look at this picture right now, for instance, I want to look at it even longer. It's very fast right now. Maybe you can do it slower. But I really want to see, like, everything, and I want to see, like, how the light comes in and what's in the bag and why there's something in the bag. Is there something in the bag? Is it a studio? Is it, I don't know. I want to feel the person. I want to see the eyes. I want to... And somehow it gets lost. And for me, don't want to talk too long, I'm finished in 1 minute, but for me, pictures are like capturing the dimension of reality, because we don't know what the dimension is we live in. So this is like, we have time, we have like something that was like 1 second ago and something that's in 2 seconds. But the only proof that we exist are like these pictures that capture this moment. And if we don't look at these moments, then how can we realize reality? You know what I mean? And yeah, that's what bothers me a little bit. And that's what still bothers me when we talk about album covers right now.
So do you feel like the album covers and artwork has been influenced by the need to capture attention?
Yeah,
so it's
of
influenced
course. Of course, also like when you have a record label or you have a distribution, they always tell you what's good for Spotify. That'd be like, no details, this is too much detail, no one sees that. It has to be small because it's on a smartphone, and maybe your face and like do something crazy. And this is like, and if you want to have your music put out there so the people can consume it, so the people, you know, want to see it, then you have to kind of follow these rules, because otherwise I'll be like, there's so many nice details, but no one sees it because it's on a smartphone and it's like that big.
I mean, it is. I mean, I started out with album covers, shooting album covers, and then they went to CDs, long boxes. I mean, probably no one knows what I'm talking about unless you're of a certain age, but they were the long boxes, and they were easy to be, so no one would steal the CD because they were so small. And we had to shoot for the long box, which is the weirdest thing, because if anyone knows, you bought the thing, you ripped it in half and threw it away. So we'd have to shoot a picture that would fit a long box, which made no sense to me. And then CDs and digital came down, and then now you're at Spotify. So now we're not really shooting faces much. You're shooting a face because it's all it's going to land on it. And you know, if you think back on, you know, I used to buy albums just for the album cover. I go through and I flick through and I go, if someone made this album cover, the music inside must be unbelievable, you know. And that's a very different time, you know. And it's a harder thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the amazing things about music and photography. Whenever you get an amazing album cover and you just see it, and you're like, okay, this person, they have taste, they have style, they have a vision. I want to hear the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it used to be that way. I mean, editorially, it used to be that way too, where you'd see a cover of Rolling Stone. Of course, they had their staff photographers I worked for Rolling Stone and Spin and Musician and Cream and each one had their own sense of. Ray Gun would have been like the one that was really off the deep end, that shot really amazing photography. You could really push the boundaries on it, and it made you want to go look at their music if the picture was interesting or the picture was what you wanted. But then, you know, if everything is polished and put in front of you, you have no sense of the person, and just because they're wearing a Dolce & Gabbana and a white background staring back at you doesn't mean you're going to go buy their music. I'd rather know what they are thinking, you know, and what they're doing. And I would hope that, I twice was like working on album covers with young bands, and they walked in and they looked at the clothing rack and they would say, we've never worn suits in our lives. And I'd say, well, if you're not going to wear that on stage, don't wear it. Which, of course, managers fucking hated me for that point, because I was telling him the truth. It's like, we're going to put you on an album cover in suits and ties, and then there's no reason it doesn't relate to anything in the album, and then you go play on stage and you're in jeans and a t-shirt, you know. So it didn't make any sense to me a lot of times, that stuff. So.
But in the early days, were there any other constraints on creating album artwork? Obviously now with this, you know, the Spotify attention capturing vibe, but did you have any constraints put on you when you were creating album artwork, or were you given much more like free reign, do what you want process?
It's funny, as you shot pictures, there was never a sense of we're shooting the album cover. I didn't have that a lot. I ended up doing, we're going to shoot a bunch of pictures and the best one ends up on the cover kind of thing. Sometimes, you know, like I shot Don Henley's album cover once, and it was all about being a used car salesman. So he dressed up as a used car salesman. We went to like Santa Monica, we went to a used car lot, and he became a used car salesman. That makes sense. I get it. You know what I mean? But it's like, it usually just was go out and find interesting pictures, and the more you could push it, you know, the better. And they used to always say, and it used to be the amount of rolls you shot. Like they'd say, you have, you know, 30 rolls to shoot this album cover or today's session, which I always hated that rule. And then they would turn around and digital now has no rules about that. You could shoot thousands of pictures and no one's ever going to know the difference. But you'd show up and they'd say, we need to at least get 6 setups today. And I'm like, well, I'm going to shoot for 12. And, you know, I'll shoot 6 that you think that you want, and I'm going to shoot 6 that I want. And I'll push the boundary. I'll push outside. I'll make sure I cover all the basics for you. You know, here's your obvious. And then now I'm going to shoot you something that's really kind of cool. And if the artist got it and the management got it, that was fine. I mean, that was as long as the artist was happy. But if the artist said, like, I don't really know what we're doing here, I'd be like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. You know, just listen to the room and move through it. So, yeah.
And another just occurred to me with press shots. You know, I ran a music magazine for 10 years, and I find that if a band had a great press shot, they got more coverage.
Yeah.
You know, they needed good music to back it up. We wouldn't, you know, promote it if it was crap. But when they have a really strong image, you just get more coverage for it.
I mean, in press shots, like, you know, it's like, if all of a sudden you get this press shot and it's the same one you've seen in 6 other magazines, you're not going to run it very big. So you shoot things to make it interesting so the band has a multiple out there, and you can say, well, this is just for you, and you still have good stuff in the background to do it. So yeah.
And then a question, like press shots, are they even still relevant today? Do you still create press shots to send around, or is it a constant production of content?
You know what? I don't know what's going on today. I just know what I do. What I get from, you know, from my distributor, they're very nice people, but you have to have like photos every day authentically like made, and for each online magazine you need a new authentic one, and please nothing that's too built up, and no, you know, no photography. It's better to be authentic. So I think when you do a release and you have like your 10 or 15 pictures, which is very important. Back in the days it was like 4 or something. You are glad if they are happy with that, because this is not enough. There has to be something more authentic to you. And I think sometimes it's a nice challenge to do that, but on the other hand, it's like, for people who build up pop cultural identity, like for instance Lady Gaga, or I just like take the pop stars right now, they all have like, they're like in character, and they have like loads of footage. But like for artists right now, there's only one decision. Either you do the authentic thing and it'd be better on iPhone and a little bit, you know, with the pixels and everything, or you do high end, but then you have to have like 200 shots or something, because it has to be different, everywhere different.
Yeah. And authenticity, that seems to be a key thing right now. Yeah.
You mean truth? Does that really exist anymore? Anyone go for truth anymore? It's your own truth at that point, right? It's like,
yeah, but that's the thing. It's not the truth. You
yeah.
know?
No, I know what you mean by it. I mean, it's like when you look at a picture, you know if it's a real picture of the person or not, easily. And or if it's something that someone's created to basically make them look like something that they're not. It doesn't reflect what you do.
Yeah. And the thing is, like when I build up my, when I work with photographers and we build up the pictures and we check the light and we see if something is, I need to do this or that. The thing is, like for me as an artist, this is my most authentic self, because this is how I envision myself in the best particular way. And every time I try to do something authentic, it's not authentic anymore, because I'm feeling ashamed for doing that. Like when people say like, can you please do like a quick like Insta reel where you promote something? I'm like not myself. I look at these videos and like, who's that person? That's not authentic. But that's what's authentic for other people. And this is like, that's the sad thing, because pop culture arts is for me not about being like, having like a picture which is not in high res and it is in your bathroom. It is about what is the best version of your artist self that you want to portray, and this is pop music.
I think that actually sounds really similar to your approach to photography as well. You know, it's not like perfection. You know, I think you embrace the imperfection and represent the authentic nature of the people that you shoot. Yeah, I think that's it.
I mean, to work on the point of perfection is only you're going to fail in a bad way. Yeah. It's like if you choose to basically be honest to yourself and what you want out of something, and it's really not easy as an artist, as a musician, as anything. I mean, you'd really, to try so hard to satisfy others when you're trying to do something that's real is always going to fail. I mean, people will like it, they'll be fine, but you won't be satisfied at all. I mean, I mean, that's why the exhibition downstairs, I would say that, 90% of it is stuff that I just did for myself without any purpose or reason. I just did it because I wanted to do it. Now, I do other things to make money to pay the bills. So, that's what I do. I would think it'd be harder as a musician to do that, because to get someone to actually, which actually it's easier now probably. You can make a song and put it out and you don't have to care about anybody anymore. You can just stick it out, But to get someone to support it and take it out and push it around so people can hear it is a very, that's the fine line. It's commerce, art and commerce. It's like, people want to make sure that, okay, you can do that, but I need to make money on it, So it's kind of it's why it's interesting at Fotografiska. There's no sense of making money on the show. It's an exhibition. It's like, it's what it's supposed to be, and there's not an intent to basically gain any kind of financial gain out of it. I mean, obviously there's something out of it because people come to the show, but they kind of collaborate with artists to basically allow them to be themselves. So.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable platform. I think it's to have these platforms to showcase photography. They're getting fewer and further between.
Yeah.
I would put magazines in this same bracket as well.
Yeah.
Where for shooting a front cover for a magazine, like you've shot covers for REM, Alanis Morissette, loads of covers. And I feel like it's such an amazing platform for an artist to get that level of intentionality and selection on a cover. I think it's really, I think that we have a loss when that's gone. So for example, could you tell us about the Nirvana cover for Spin and how that came around?
The Nirvana one?
Yeah. It's my favorite. It's an amazing shot. I love it. Nirvana were the first band I ever saw live, and that completely changed my life, so I have a special relationship to this photo.
Yeah, it was for the cover of Spin magazine, and they came in, and I had this idea that I'd never done before, which is basically to do try to get all three within a photograph and kind of push them through, and it was it was said to me not to shoot Kurt by himself. The band had to be shot as a three. It was very important. And then, of course, I started doing this collage of the three of them together, and they're looking at me going like, well, you're shooting Kurt by himself. I said, yeah, but this picture won't make any sense unless it's next to, unless it goes across. Like, if it doesn't say Kurt, Dave, Chris, it's not going to make any sense. So they go together, once I do it. Because I was throwing the Polaroids on the ground when we were in the street, showing them how it went together. And he was interesting because he didn't really have a sense of there was no. It was like he started making faces and doing what he wanted to. He knew that no matter what he did, they'd publish it, kind of thing, So that's why the color ones are one way, and then there's the black and white cover. And then I'd shot one Polaroid where you saw his whole head. It was a 665 Polaroid. And I had that. And then when he died, a couple months later, they came back to me and said, did you get any singles of him? And I said, and I didn't want to, I had one single where he was in a sweater kind of looking off. And I was like, no, I didn't really do anything. And they said, well, would you mind if we crop the cover? So they came back, and that's what, you'll see it in the exhibition, it's there. The red line was the cover for Spin. And so that's what they used it for. So, but that was the whole grunge era where it was like, then I was shooting, with Alice in Chains and shooting with, with Soundgarden, which I met through shooting editorially, and then they had me come in and create images for Spoon Man, and it was all Polaroids and just kind of creating content that then they would kind of move through the collages for the video, which was a big thing back in the day. As a photographer, you'd meet people shooting editorially, and then they would come back and hire you as, for that. So, but I don't know if I'd never worked with Dave after that, and nothing kind of transpired out of that, which sometimes you'd work with somebody and they come back through, so.
And how did it feel to have that cover appear on the cover of Spin, the photo?
I don't know, I was never happy with it, with the initial image. So then when we did the secondary one with the black and white, I was like, I got it, and then, and I knew why they did it, but it kind of felt weird. It was like, it's always something weird, like, I guess I'm old enough that a lot of people have died that I've photographed at this point, and then people always call for the pictures. Or the phone, it's even when David died, it was the weirdest thing, because my neighbor's name is David, and I woke up to my phone just blowing up, and in the middle of the night, and I woke up my wife, and I said, David died, and she goes, our neighbor David died? And I was like, no, David Bowie died. And it was like, and I looked at my phone, it was everyone looking for pictures, wanting to talk about pictures, and I just ignored it. I just put it, I was like, I'm not dealing with this. And I've always had a relationship with them that I wouldn't do anything unless they said it was okay, because it was just, fair game how that went. So, and I didn't want to talk about it much either, because it was what I did. So it was like, yeah.
And what about the other covers that you shot that were more intentional, like where you're
What?
What about the other covers that you would shoot that were more intentional? Like the Alanis Morissette cover?
Well, Alanis Morissette cover was shot for Rolling Stone, and no one had seen her, because all her videos and everything up front, she covered her face, and she was, and she'd done a photo shoot with another photographer for the cover of Rolling Stone, and they dressed her up as a court jester on top of pillows. I don't know. I mean, that's what they did. They rejected the cover, and then they came. I did 3 covers like that for Rolling Stone, where I was the second one shooting somebody. Liz Phair was another one I shot because they didn't like what came in. They had her on they got one of those mechanical horses and stuck her on Michigan Avenue in Chicago and had her riding it very sexually, and no one liked it. So they sent me, and I met her, and she showed up in a slip and said, just photograph me this way. And I'm like, okay. It was just like I was fine. But with Alanis, it was the same thing. Is she's sitting there and she's looking at me, and I said, well, can you just pull your hair aside? And then she kind of looked, and then she looked over at her manager, and she was like, and then she dropped her hair to the side, and that's where the cover came out of. And then the rest of the shoot, we just shot her, with her hair out of her face. But it's like I didn't know until after, when they told me that she hadn't been photographed kind of visually like that. There's a lot of things over the years that, the REM cover where, I went down, I'd done their album cover, I went back to shoot them for Rolling Stone, and they were all wearing sunglasses and hats, and that's like a big no-no for Rolling Stone. Like, they want to see people's faces. And then I show up with this picture, and it's like, is what it is. It's like, yeah, so. But it was an interesting time. Even shooting album covers, sometimes when you shoot things, and I still have that. I shoot a lot of movie posters and TV advertising now, so you never know what's going to end up like as the poster for any of this. I just worked on The Complete Unknown, and I spent like 7 hours photographing Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan, and they initially handed in all the pictures that were all unit, and then Timothy even said, "Where's all the pictures I spent with that guy taking those pictures?" And then they ended up, the first one when they went out the door was one that we did. And then they decided since I hadn't got a chance to shoot everybody, they did everyone in live. But there's a whole group of pictures of him as Bob Dylan that no one will ever see. Because it's kind of like, which is that way, like a lot of musicians I've shot, you'll never see 95% of the stuff I photographed of somebody, unless I did a book or something. It'd be like, yeah, which is kind of weird. You have drawers and drawers of stuff, so.
And are the choices that the editorial decisions that are made, are they the same ones that you would make, or?
Sometimes, but rarely. I always have a different opinion about what I thought of the shoot, so. I won't go into detail about that. No, I'm still working, so I have to. Politically, I will say it's all amazing. No, it's great. No, it's.
They made the right choice.
They made the right choice. It was unbelievable what they picked. I can't believe it.
And Balbina, you've been on the other side. So you were on the cover of Das Wetter magazine quite recently.
On which magazine?
Das Wetter, the German music mag.
Really?
Yeah.
I was?
Oh yeah, but that wasn't recently. That was a couple of years ago. Yeah, I was like, really? I was, but it's a couple of years ago. Yeah.
What's it like being on the other side of that experience of being put on the cover? Being on the cover,
that's kind of a nice experience, for if you have a profile neurosis, then it's very nice. But it's also very weird because there is a picture of a person that you're not anymore, because you've been that person in this picture, and sometimes you feel like you have an imposter syndrome and be like, yeah, that's a person, but that's not me, because pictures on magazines are always very curated, and they find the perfect shot of you, and the reality is different. So I'm a little bit, how do you say, ambivalent in English?
Ambivalent.
Yeah, ambivalent. But it's a nice feeling, and I think when you talked about the Alanis Morissette cover, I'll be having a shoot from a magazine soon, and I know that there is no way to see the pictures before. So, and I think there'd be kind of that situation where you see yourself, and because Veta, I could choose a little bit. I could be like, oh, please do not take this picture, rather this. And in this magazine, I cannot, give my opinion on that. And I think that when you say these things about having Alanis Morissette uncovering her face in a way that she's never done before, I think that's the moment that's most fragile and that's most precious in pop music, because musicians always try to put themselves into a certain light, and that's kind of a very, very important anecdote also to know that, because these are the moments where you have authenticity in pictures, and this is the kind of authenticity what I think it's very, precious.
I read in a previous interview that you said anything perfect is boring, and I was wondering, this aversion to perfection, is this perhaps why you draw on the photographs, you make collages, you treat them differently, you rough them up a little bit? Do you think this is any where if something feels like it's too perfect, that you just want to mess with it a little?
I mean, I guess that I love the happy accident. It's like the flair. It's like I always used to say, flair is your friend. Things come out of imperfection. If you know exactly what you're going to do, like if I was to photograph you and say, this is the lighting, this is what you wear, this is where you stand, and this is where you look. What is that? You know what I mean? It's like, but on the way there might be about 8 or 9 things that happen that are just 10 times more interesting, that were unexpected, or you moved and I was at a slow shutter speed and there's a blur and it's a lot more interesting than basically just saying, it shouldn't be clinical. Let's say that much. I hate when things look clinical. I find a lot of photography nowadays to be very clinical, very much like lit, and digital has done that to it because you can retouch the crap out of everything. I think you need to see the flaw. I love when I photographed Helen Mirren once, and I said, I showed her the Polaroid, and I said, and she kind of looked at it, and I said, well, don't worry, they're probably going to retouch it. And she goes, they better not. I've earned every single line in my face, and it's like, and don't tell them not to do anything, which is a rarity. Otherwise, people look at it and they go, oh my God, look at my bags, and you're like, okay, it's like, but.
Yeah, when we were looking around the exhibition earlier, and you have the shots where you've taken the 4 Polaroids at once with that camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I loved them because it was like the moments between the poses and the natural part of it. Yeah.
I have this camera that you can. It's an old passport camera, and it's got a turret in the front of it, and it used to be shot on a piece of Polaroid, and as you shoot with it, you shoot one, and then you just turn the turret to go to the next frame, the next frame, the next frame. And if you do it as you're doing it, it almost takes the person off guard. So they're not being so much like in the pictures now. It's like you're catching them in between these moments. And you kind of get more of an honest portrait of the person because of that. They're still them, but there's little imperfections. And then I would cut them up and make collages, and I'd basically put my stink on it, which would be like, this is how I saw you with these pieces of film, and this is the rotation of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. The advent of digital that we were just talking about with the digital camera, how did you get around that? With the advent of the digital camera, I believe that you messed up the digital cameras in some way in order to. Yeah.
I try to find that. So I'll buy. I have digital cameras, and I learned the whole digital thing, and I love the point that digital allows us to go further, and me to use other lights, and that how quick it is. It's almost too quick. I mean, I shoot too fast nowadays. I mean, right, Chris? Chris will tell you is like, when you shoot like 6,000 images in 2.5 hours, you're like, you're a little out of control because you're just going click, 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 click. But what I'll do is I'll end up getting, I just bought a new digital camera, medium format, and then I chose to go buy old lenses out of Japan to put on them, because the computer and the camera can't process what you've put on the front of it. It can't focus for you. It's not perfect glass. Each one of the lenses is not balanced. So if you change like focal lengths, it's like the color's different. It's kind of like, which is kind of fun. It's like, I like that, and I can't control that. So I that's kind of where I'm at now with digital, is I try to find ways. I do the perfection of it because I have to, because of work. But when I do things for myself, I try to find things that are, I have a lens that basically changes aperture as I'm shooting with it, if I like it or not. It just all of a sudden it goes darker and it goes lighter and it goes darker, and it's kind of fun because you see these things happen that I wouldn't have expected sometimes. So, yeah.
More of those fun imperfections.
Yeah.
In your career as a musician, obviously you've seen like the advent of the proliferation of the smartphone and the prevalence of social media. How do you feel that has changed your relationship to photography and content as a musician?
Well, my relationship to photography hasn't changed a lot because I still consume photography in a classical way, and I still I really like to buy print magazines. I like to buy books. I like to watch photography. I like to go to galleries. I like to go here because I like to consume it. I always loved it, and I still do. I think many people still do it. And I'm really more curious about how there is if there is a way to implement that into the daily life, because also when I'm off to work, when I sit in the subway or something, I also consume fast photography on Instagram, and sometimes it's very intriguing for me because I find things that are interesting, but I always have the urge to go into a physical space and to have it on paper, on a picture, and I wonder how that will develop within our society.
How do you think it might develop? Do you have any thoughts on that? How do you think it might develop?
Well, I think in a certain nostalgic way, people are going back to more natural and handcrafted ways to do things in general. So there is a certain like we heard in the music right now that we listen to in the band, you hear the guitars and you hear the bass, and it's getting dirtier, and the people want to see imperfection on stage. And I think it will develop in a certain way, because everything you hear on Spotify, you see on Instagram, is like dead. It's like not really out there. It's too authentic to be true. And I think there'll be a certain movement into the more natural, authentic feeling, because also I'm for instance not that afraid of AI, because everything I tested in AI and I work with it just to see where it goes, nothing captures reality. And I think that this urge for reality, this urge to feel people and to feel, the crowd, and to see the picture and to see the detail, it's getting more and more and more. Even if you see how many people came here today, we've been through COVID and everything. People want to feel what's happening in the people that do stuff, not only art, but that do stuff. And I also like when you see how many people start handcrafting again, how many things made out of wood are like interesting right now, how people don't want to consume fast furniture anymore, but they rather say, I buy this wooden chair that it's more expensive, but I know that somebody did that. I think that we as people, we really want to feel each other. We really want to get in touch with things we do, we say, and we're humans. It can't be lost. Maybe we forgot it, and maybe we're like in a twirl, where everything's going too fast, but I really think that's going into the other direction. Maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 5, but I think on a long term, yeah.
And what about you? You've been a photographer for such a long time and have seen so many developments. Can you foresee what's going to change in the future or how it might develop?
Sadly, yes, but it's. But I'm 64 years old, and I probably don't have to worry too much about it at this point. I mean, I'd hate to be a young photographer at this point, to be honest. You're gonna have to really figure yourself out and hold your guns and what you want to do. You know, in the movie industry, they've already started making AI movie posters. You know, so they don't need me. They don't need me to go in the room. They don't. There's been an interesting backlash to that because they don't realize that if you put that house in that poster and you don't own that picture, you get sued. So in an AI situation, you need to hold on all the content that's going to be put in there has to be that. So that's the line right now that's trying to be figured out. But it's hard. It's like, I think it's going to have what happened with grunge. It's going to backlash. People are going to want to physically see someone play. Like tonight, it's like they were a grand combination of what is possible to basically connect the two. Like you could have taken away the drum beat and the computer part of that and still had the intensity of who the three of them are, because the rawness and the reality and the truth of what they do. The three of them, you know, they're just icing on the cake is finding that little line that you need to put in and using a computer to basically help that line is that's fine. You know, if it was all that, then no, it's not, you know. But they know exactly how much to give you, that then you have to listen to them. And you hear the guitar, you hear the bass, you know, come in and over, and the bass, and none of them are perfect. They're all gonna, you know, each performance, if you saw that play, the guitar would be different, the bass would be different, you know, she would do like a variety of different things to kind of, you know, entice you to listen to what's going on, you know, and that's the beauty of what that is. And hopefully that'll be the next part of it, you know, that you still kind of feel it, you know, so.
Like more integrating technology into it instead of it.
I don't know.
Instead of technology replacing people.
I mean, it's like anything. It's you can use it to basically solve a problem, or you can use it to basically just kind of help you kind of get to where you need to go. So yeah.
Do we want to do any audience questions at this point, or do you want to keep going? I think we're at 50 minutes now, so we're going to do like 15 minutes of audience questions, Q&A. Yeah.
Anybody have a question?
Cool. Over here.
I see people. No. Okay.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm wondering, so I think the most beautiful thing is to obviously shoot people in their authenticity. I think the hardest thing though is what I find the most authentic the person is in that moment and interesting when I shoot them is that they also like it, because they mostly like something that is not really them. So where do you find like a middle ground?
So, I mean, you're saying that kind of creating, you're basically both taking a picture and you both like it, but maybe it's not how they normally see themselves, because they have a perception of themselves. Is that what, you know, and that's what it is. And then when you show them another side of themselves, sometimes, you know what I mean, it's kind of a different thing. And it could be exciting, you know, otherwise, or maybe they could hate it and they'd be like, it could be the greatest picture in the world, and they might look at it and say like, I don't see that. That's not me, you know, because they in their mind have stared at themselves in the mirror over and over again and know exactly what side of their face you photograph, or you know what I mean. It's kind of like that kind of thing. So I don't know. Does that answer? I'm sorry. Does that answer your question, or is that?
Well, I think you must have come across the moment where you knew this was great. I'm capturing the person, the most authentic moment.
Yeah.
But the rest hates it.
Yeah.
What do?
You then take a picture for them, and then you have the one you like. That's all you can do. You can't argue with people about stuff. I mean, I've argued till I'm blue in the face with people sometimes going like, you don't see how this is amazing? This is like, it's not how you've ever been photographed. You've never been seen this way. This is, look at the light, look how beautiful it is. But to them, they're like, it's not what was in my head when I got here. And that is the saturation we are in media nowadays. People have that kind of preconceived idea when they show up to a photo shoot. When they're being photographed, so yeah. But hey, you got the picture. I mean, you know, I have like walls of stuff that I know that I love that they don't get. You know what I mean? So yeah. But just keep shooting them. Don't not shoot them. That's the key thing. Is just because someone hated it doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot it. You know, and it's hard because nowadays with digital, the minute you shoot it, it ends up on a screen in front of you. And then everyone can judge you. I used to say I had the most amazing voices in my head when I would photograph analog. They were all mine. And now, if I'm shooting, I'm connected to a cable that goes to a computer, and everyone behind me is basically talking out loud about what the picture is. Oh, that's great. Oh, this is it. You know, my favorite ever was when a publicist said to the actress, and she's like over here, and she's like, no, you need to look over toward me. And so I go, but I'm over here. So if she looks at you, I'm looking at the back of her head. You know what I mean? But to her, and I was like, so I shot it, and I looked at her, I go, is that what you want me to shoot? And it was just kind of like, but she's not going to say she's wrong. She's just going to say, oh, well, you know, I mean, if you want to be helpful, come stand right behind me if you want to guide, if you want to direct her, so we can get out of here. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, so.
Any other questions? Anybody want to ask another question?
Hi.
Here?
Here.
Cool. Thank you.
Hello. Frank, you said that sometimes you find yourself doing your best work when it's for yourself. And I wanted to ask you, how do you separate your work from your personal work or art? Because I'm finding it hard, like how to separate work from art, especially when I monetize my art. I'm starting to feel not motivated. So how did you come to like a good point where you can work and you have a like defined style for your work, but also a defined style for your art, and how does that make it different?
I try not to categorize it, to be honest. I know what I do. I know what I have to do. And even in the middle of that, I struggle with it sometimes. And I will always try to find something within a day, even if I'm doing like a movie poster and I know the whole thing's shot on gray seamless, let's say, and I've been handed a pile of comps, and I have to basically give them the pictures they want, you know, that cover the comps. I will sometimes build something on the side, just go, but what about we shoot this for a second? And I'm lucky enough they let me do that, you know. So, and I'm constantly trying new things and trying new lenses and new light. And I have a studio at my house, and I'll try different ways of doing things. And luckily, people will see it and they say, well, can you do this for us? Now, it might be one shoot out of 8 I have to do for them, but at least I get to do the one. You know, it's like if you can make 10 images a year that you are satisfied with, that you will feel that you're growing, then you've achieved everything. Because that's a big thing to do. If you shoot the whole year and everything looks the same that you did the year before, stop. Stop for a second, rethink, and then go out and go really be uncomfortable. Go do something that really is uncomfortable to you. And sure enough, it's going to be the most truth that you have. It'll be the most real, and people react to that. The more honest the picture, the more they react to it. It always is, because they see how pure it is, you know? If you try to satisfy everybody, it's just, it could be anybody doing it, So, but you give them the one satisfying picture, and then you show them the one that's like 180 degrees in the opposite direction and say, well, what about this? So, and that comes out of personal work, trying things, knowing that when you get there, you can try something and show them that. So, you know. So I try not to say, this is what this is what this is. I mean, everything in the personal work downstairs, I probably have tried on a commercial job. Someone saw it and said, can you make this, can you do that for us? You know? And the more you show them and keep showing them and keep changing and growing, it'll help. So, does that answer the question?
Yeah, totally. So
Okay.
art influences the work. That's amazing.
The what?
The work.
Don't worry. Just keep growing. I mean, you shouldn't. I mean, I don't know everything. Every year I try to learn something new. You know, try something different. Try a new camera. You know, I'm lucky to be surrounded by a great team of people who will bring me things and say, "Have you seen this? Have you tried this?" You know, and that's and then I keep looking and trying to see how things are done. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, over here.
Way in the back. Over there. Over there.
I sort of have two questions. The first is, have you ever tried to photograph yourself? Have you ever tried to do a self-portrait and be in front of your own camera?
You'll see them downstairs.
Yeah. I guess my question is, after seeing that, like, did that inform your work and how you approach people when you photograph them by experiencing yourself, or?
I mean, I'm always amazed by people who do self-portraits and they do really amazing ones because they're beautiful and whatever, because they're good-looking people. And then you got me. So there's a 3 series of pictures when you come into the exhibition on the left side by my statement of who I am. And there are 3 pictures I took during COVID. And I just set the camera up and just kept on photographing myself, blurring, and then I made them really contrasty. No shirt on, just just throwing my head around, blurring it because I had no subjects. I couldn't, shoot anybody. I have a tendency to take myself apart in my self-portraits. Maybe I don't take them seriously. I have no problem looking bad. So yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of that. There's quite a few, I think, in the exhibition. There probably shouldn't be in the exhibition, but I don't know. I don't take myself that seriously, I guess. So, but yeah, I think it's important to do self-portraits. The worse the picture is, the better. It's like if everything's beautiful with beautiful light, what are you learning? You know what I mean? Show everybody your dark side. It's more fun. It's like yeah.
I think we got time for one more question. This well-dressed guy in the middle here.
Well, yes, I have a question because I'm kind of wondering with our generation, we live in a world of reflections all the time. Like with social media, you mentioned the fact that sometimes we kind of are aware of just one part of ourselves because we're just used to taking that selfie in this one angle. So we kind of, I think kind of streamline and just mold ourselves into what we expect others want to see as well. What is your best way when you shoot someone, typically, with that attitude, to break that, mask, to break that first wall and get where you want to get?
You mean the perception of the person I'm photographing of themselves?
Yes.
That I try to get past that.
Yeah.
It always depends on why you're there and what you're doing. Satisfying self is hard in a commercial world, to know that you're taking a picture differently and you're trying to basically show someone a different way of seeing themselves. To research somebody, and I always try to research somebody and then figure the opposite way to photograph them. You nowadays, which is amazing, you can say, I'm photographing, Selena Gomez, and then you can go online and go, Selena Gomez, and you go across and all these pictures pop up, and you see all the ways she's been photographed. Try to figure what the next one she hasn't been done. You know what I mean? What is it that it is? But you're right in the sense of that everyone has this perception of themselves, and you're trying to satisfy this social media, what is perfect in social media. Just think about that. What's perfect for social media? I mean, like, fuck them. I mean, I don't want that shit. It's like, that's all that crap. It's like, find yourself. Because I found when I was starting out that if I had basically done what everybody else was doing, I would have just been another one. And instead, I was very lucky. I had an agent who basically thought it was positive that I would constantly change my style, change my light, change the camera, change the format. You know, even to the point where she would say, I think you've shot with that light enough. Would you try to do something else? You know what I mean? So she got it that that's who I was as a person. And so don't get, that's always the wrap up. If you get wrapped up in the crap of what we're supposed to be doing and to satisfy people, especially trying to do your own artwork, that's the worst way to start it. You know, be better to walk in blindfolded, not know anything about the person, not know anything, ever seen a picture of them, and then you meet them, and then you meet them on the space without any hair or makeup or whatever, and then you basically shoot the picture you want. You see that moment, the conversation, this is the moment we're together, this is the picture I'm taking, you know? And if they hate it, you have the picture, and then shoot them the way they want, and then say goodbye. You know, it's just like they have the picture, but you, as long as, always make sure you shoot the one you want in the middle of a day, no matter how short of a time you have with somebody. You know, if it's 5 minutes, you can shoot two different kinds of pictures in 5 minutes. Everyone, if you photograph somebody within the first 10 frames, they're the same person at number 175. I'm telling you, it's like, you know.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, just, we're going to wrap up now, but a quick reminder that there are signed copies of Frank's book available here at the side of the stage, so everybody should come and buy one and say hello to Frank.
I promise I'll put my DNA in it, and I'll just spit on it, and I'll draw, and I'll cut my finger, you know, like blood. No.
So yeah, thank you so much, Balbina. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thanks, Photographica, and thanks you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.